Tuesday, everyone. It is a soapbox, I guess a soapbox after dark episode. I hope everyone is doing okay today. So I wasn't going to originally do an episode today, if I'm being honest. Today was a treatment day, and I tend to be a little bit fatigued on these days. But there was gargantuan news afoot that somewhat demanded, you can even say commanded, my presence. It is going to have gargantuan consequences. Primarily, the main consequence is that nobody knows what is going to happen next. No, I'm not talking about the United States. I'm talking about in the UK. I'm talking about Brexit. So as I sit here a little bit fatigued, I am resolute in giving this because it is profound and dramatic in a way that I am unfamiliar with in our politics. I mean, when Donald Trump got elected, it was somewhat of a shocking thing, but the potential was always there for Trump, but it was still somewhat of a shocking thing. But at the end of the day, kind of, you get accustomed to your surroundings and you move on. And for the most part, the next day, meaning tomorrow, you have a general idea of what's going to take place. In the UK right now, that is not the case. They've had a monumental vote on Withdrawal Agreement 2.0 that was put up by the Prime Minister. And just like the other withdrawal agreements, this one was voted down. This one was voted down by 391 to 242. Now, understand what this means. The government has worked on a withdrawal agreement for Brexit. It put up this withdrawal agreement. First, it postponed it because she knew she was going to lose, meaning Theresa May. And after she postponed it, because she knew she was going to lose, she was forced to essentially have the vote. And it was crashed. Her withdrawal agreement was voted down. The Prime Minister was compelled to come up with a new idea on what she was going to do. And the new idea that she came up with was essentially the same withdrawal agreement with one difference. She was going to go to Brussels and she was going to demand that they change the Irish backstop, the Northern Irish backstop. The fear of the Brexiteers is that they would lock them into this kind of subservient client state status in perpetuity, and that they couldn't unilaterally discharge themselves. And in all honesty, I kind of see their point on this. If you are a nation, you consider yourself a sovereign nation, you consider yourself a power. Hell, you're Britain. You used to be masters of the universe for all intents and purposes. A lot of the chaos that's around the globe is kind of going on because of some of the stuff that Britain has done. Can you really lock yourself into a situation that the country itself doesn't have the sovereign right to extricate itself from it? I don't know how many people would do that, or how many countries would do that. So that's the situation to which Britain is presented with. In this case, the Prime Minister said she was going to get concessions, said she was going to get the withdrawal agreement changed and the Irish backstop changed. She got something, but I listened to her have a conversation. I listened to her and Juncker in their press conference, and I was unconvinced. And by the questions that the reporters were asking, they were also unconvinced, meaning it sounds like she's putting political casting on essentially something that is fundamentally the same thing. The Attorney General went into the well of Parliament and gave his assessment. And his assessment was essentially what I just said. It's political castings, but at the end of the day, the backstop is fundamentally the same, or unchanged, I should say. It went up for a vote, and it got struck down. This is what took place in Parliament today. It was absolutely entirely fascinating to watch this, because keep in mind, they leave, supposedly, the European Union on March 29th, I believe. If you think about it, that's only a few weeks. And they have no idea what is going to happen on that day. They may potentially crash out of the European Union. Now, you could say by sheer incompetence, and some people would say that incompetence is somewhat planned. I don't know, we can talk about it at the end. But at the end of the day, you can understand this kind of dramatic thing of, here's a withdrawal agreement, shot down. Dramatic numbers, shot down. And then it's like, okay, what's plan B? It's like, that was plan B. That was plan B. There is no other plan in this case. And we leave in 2 weeks. There is no other plan, and we leave in 2 weeks. They have ideas. They have no plans. Take a look at this. Because the fact of the matter is nothing you can get through Parliament. That's kind of the problem. Let's see. And I want this. There we are. All right. Come on. My system is freezing. I don't know if that's translated to that.
Are these the tellers making their way through, do you think?
This is them talking about it just before it. I love this part. This is why I'm showing this, because I love the way you can say the pump circumstances associated with it.
We now have the tellers ready to declare the result of the vote. Let's listen into events in the chamber.
Order. The ayes to the right, 242. The noes to the left, 391. The ayes to the right, 242. The noes to the left, 391. So the noes have it. The noes have it. Unlock. Order. Point of order.
The EU has told them there will be no more negotiations. We have nothing else to talk about. That was the last thing that we were willing to give. And even that was, for the most part, just castings of sorts. Meaning, they've always said that they were willing to let's what's the word I'm looking for? Add clarity. That's the word they were using. Add clarity to what that means. Meaning that's a political term of there's somewhat leeway in the way this language is being used and this language can be interpreted, but we're not changing the agreement. We can amend the agreement. Meaning, I did a story the other day where they essentially went with this idea of having an amendment agreement to the agreement. With certain changes. Now, those changes were modest, and clearly those changes weren't enough to sway Parliament. But the EU has said no new negotiations. No new negotiations. Let's take a look at this. This is the point in which people start to panic. I guess that's my point. Listen to the Prime Minister on this. I have to be honest, my heart went out for her because A, she's lost her voice, and she is, she's just flown across to Strasbourg for this kind of emergency meeting, and she still didn't get it. And this was the result. And she told them she was going to hold this vote today, and she held this vote today. She didn't postpone it. There's another vote that's coming, I think, on Thursday that's going to have to do with whether or not no-deal Brexit is ruled off the table. And then at some point, if I'm not mistaken, there's going to be another vote on whether or not they're going to create an extension. Nobody knows what's going to happen. Everybody's freaked out. And let's hear the Prime Minister explain or give guidance as to what should take place next.
The Prime Minister.
On a point of order, Mr. Speaker, I profoundly regret the decision that this House has taken tonight. I continue to believe that by far the best outcome is that the United Kingdom leaves the European Union in an orderly fashion with a deal. And that the deal we've negotiated is the best and indeed the only deal available. But, Mr. Speaker, I would like to set out briefly how the government means to proceed. 2 weeks ago, I made a series of commitments from this dispatch box regarding the steps we would take in the event that this House rejected the deal on offer. I stand by those commitments in full. Therefore, tonight we will table a motion for debate tomorrow to test whether the House supports leaving the European Union without a deal on the 29th of March. The Leader of the House will shortly make an emergency business statement confirming the change to tomorrow's business. This is an issue of grave importance for the future of our country. Just like the referendum, there are strongly held and equally legitimate views on both sides. For that reason, I can confirm that this will be a free vote on this side of the House.
Now, this is a really big deal, because what this means is this no whips, vote your conscience. She's realizing to some degree that Parliament has essentially deboned her, at least in the standpoint of authority. She is a zombie prime minister. Parliament is taking the reins and is going along its own course. Now, some of this is just because Parliament, nothing gets through. There's no deal that can get majority support at this point in order to get through. So she's leaving it to Parliament. She's saying, look, free vote. If you guys think that, a no-deal Brexit is on the table, fair enough. Take your vote. I'm not going to push you one way or the other on that vote. People don't even know how the Prime Minister is going to vote on that. So that's going to be fascinating. I'm assuming she's going to vote no on that. But again, you're stuck in kind of a problem with that situation. If you vote that no deal is off the table, then what do you have? You're stuck with a deal, but no deal can get through Parliament. What's going to take place? That's the dilemma that's going on. Either general election, which people are thinking not so much, but maybe, because they may not have a choice about it. Another referendum, which would completely bastardize the first referendum. And some people suspect that was the intention entirely in the first place, because they didn't believe Theresa May was a true Brexiteer. She was more so on the side of a Remainer. And they, from their standpoint, she got a Remainer Brexit. The other situation that may take place, Labour voted against this. There's talk about like a Norway option and those type of things, but those things for the most part still have problems and don't have majority support. Let's take a listen to this. Jeremy Corbyn is going to table his motion himself, and he's going to speak immediately after Theresa May. I'm going to let both of them talk, because those are the two main, you can say, people that are involved in this context. Notice the thing that Jeremy Corbyn doesn't say, though, in his speech. He doesn't say anything about a second referendum. So and you can imagine there's some people who are pushing hard for the referendum, is like, that rat bastard didn't say anything about a second referendum. That said, you can see kind of a tilt in the playing field. Beforehand, the public said they wanted to leave the European Union, and the government, one government fell, another government came in with the goal of delivering Brexit without destroying the country in the process of doing it. This is a Brexit. This is not the Brexit. I will say this. If you're going to have one referendum and you're going to ask the public, what do you want? And the public tells you what they want. It's close. It's extremely close, but they tell you what they want. And then later on down the line, through bungling, incompetence, or intentional malfeasance, come up with a deal that is unacceptable to Parliament, and I suspect will be unacceptable to the rest of the population itself. If you are a Brexiteer, you're going to have some feelings about that. You're going to have some feelings about that. You're going to feel like you never got your Brexit. By the same token, from the Remainer standpoint, the Remainers have shifted the conversation of this debate, meaning tomorrow or on Thursday, if they get the opportunity to rule out a no-deal Brexit, then the Brexiteers would have had their balls cut off. Now, the secondary component to that, though, is now is it possible to kill any deal and force a second referendum? It's big league politics, man. I think I said something like this early on, that the goal of these guys early on was to stop Brexit from going through. And just from the standpoint of, again, whether you want to say incompetence, intentional malfeasance, whatever you want to say, this Brexit is not going through. At least the Brexit that the Prime Minister is trying to invoke or push through. Let's let her finish. This is fascinating politics. And the EU at this point is just disgusting.
I have personally struggled with this choice, as I'm sure many other honourable members will. I'm passionate about delivering the result of the referendum, but I equally passionately believe that the best way to do that is to leave in an orderly way with a deal. And I still believe that there is a majority in the House for that course of action. And I'm conscious also of my duties as Prime Minister of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and of the potential damage to the Union that leaving without a deal could do when one part of our country is without devolved governance. I can therefore confirm that the motion will read that this House declines to approve leaving the European Union without a withdrawal agreement and a framework on the future relationship on the 29th of March 2019, and notes that leaving without a deal remains the default in UK and EU law unless this House and the EU ratify an agreement. I will return to the House to open the debate tomorrow and to take interventions from honourable members, and to ensure the House is fully informed in making this historic decision. The Government will tomorrow publish information on essential policies which would need to be put in place if we were to leave without a deal. These will cover our approach to tariffs and the Northern Ireland border, among other matters. If the House votes to leave without a deal on the 29th of March, it will be the policy of the Government to implement that decision. If the House declines to approve leaving without a deal on the 29th of March, the Government will, following that vote, bring forward a motion on Thursday on whether Parliament wants to seek an extension to Article 50. If the House votes for an extension, the Government will seek to agree that extension with the EU and bring forward the necessary legislation to change the exit date commensurate with that extension. But let me be clear. Voting against leaving without a deal and for an extension does not solve the problems we face. The EU will want to know what use we mean to make of such an extension. And this House will have to answer that question. Does it wish to revoke Article 50? Does it want to hold a second referendum? Does it want to leave with a deal but not this deal? These are unenviable choices. But thanks to the decision that the House has made this evening, they are choices that must now be faced.
That statement has a certain amount of gravity to it, right? Like, can you imagine that? I mean, it's no, they're not in a war in a sense, but it's this attitude of there is a direction that this country is going, and this Parliament needs to vote on something. And if you don't vote on something, we are going to crash out of the European Union, and it's going to have grave consequences for our country for the foreseeable future. These are not enviable choices, but these are choices that need to be made. There's a gravity to that statement, especially from the context of an entirety of a nation. Let's hear Corbyn. Corbyn is going to call for a point of order.
Point of order, Mr. Jeremy Corbyn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The government has been defeated again by an enormous majority, and they must now accept their deal, their proposal, the one the Prime Minister has put, is clearly dead and does not have the support of this House. And quite clearly, no deal must be taken off the table. We've said that before, and we'll say that again. But it does mean...
How do you do that? How do you do that? Like, I'm sorry, just logically, that doesn't make sense. If you and I are in a negotiation, or better yet, this negotiation that's taking place between the UK and between the European Union, Parliament votes to take no deal off the table, meaning we cannot leave without a deal. We're going to stay within the European Union, or at the very least, we're going to stay in this kind of quasi-relationship or transition period until we come up with a deal. And no deal is off the table. There is no situation in which we are going to accept no deal. And the European Union, or Juncker, looks at you and says, the deal on the table is the only deal we're willing to accept. You've just put a bar on the door for no deal, meaning you can't even leave without a deal, and the deal that's on offer is that deal. I guess I'm saying it doesn't necessarily make sense. In any negotiation, there has to be the opportunity for you to leave. Otherwise, it's not a negotiation. Just saying, he continues to make this argument. You guys need to vote on something in order to leave without a no-deal Brexit. I just want to be very clear on this. And barring the door just seems like a weird way to go about a negotiation. We're going to start this negotiation off saying that there is no situation in which we're going to leave without a deal. Love Corbyn. This argument, though, is always a little weird to me. But
the House has got to come together with a proposal that could be negotiated. The Labour Party has put that proposal, and we will put that proposal again, because the dangers of what the Prime Minister is proposing are basically that she carries on threatening us all with the danger of no deal, the danger of that, knowing full well the damage that will do to the British economy. This party will put forward our proposals again, which are about a negotiated customs union, access to the market and protection of rights. Those are the ones we'll put forward. We believe there may well be a majority for them, but there will also be the potential of negotiating them. The Prime Minister has run down the clock, and the clock has been run out on her. Maybe it's time instead we had a general election and the people could choose who their government should be.
which, you know, they may scream at Corbyn about this because they know he's doing this because he wants a general election. He wants the potential to win. But this is what they may end up with anyway. It may be like, either how are you going to resolve an issue when Parliament can't resolve the issue? Are you going to send it back for another referendum? And if so, what is that referendum going to ask? Is it going to ask about May's deal? Is it going to ask about staying within the European Union? Think about that one. If the public just says, okay, screw it, we'll stay. Essentially, the public has been worn down to such a degree where they just decide to stay in the European Union. Yeah, that's a tough one. All right, I'm going to end this. I'm tired. Get some rest. If you guys enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe. You can always support the PayPal or Patreon. Thanks all.